So let's talk about this research essay that you're building each week. The research essay is worth a lot of points. It's worth 200 points, so it's the heaviest weighted essay in the class. So we're working on it in parts. So step one, you've already completed. That was what you did during week 2. You submitted a topic proposal on just your ideas about what you want to do research on, and then just make sure to review my feedback on those topic proposals. If you haven't gotten a grade yet, they will be graded soon. So that way you know how to move forward and begin conducting research, which leads us to step 2. Step 2 of a research essay is to begin to start finding sources. So right now during week 3, you're going to watch a few videos about finding sources, about APA format, about how to summarize and synthesize sources into your paper. That's all part of step 2, is starting to find, now that you have an approved topic, start finding sources to validate the observations that you're making in this paper. Step 3 is to write the essay. Could be completed simultaneously while you're finding sources during this week, or maybe just this week you focus on finding sources, and then all of week 4 you spend the time writing the paper. Everybody has their own process, so that part is up to you. So it's called a community research report, but the research essay, in fact I'll just say your research, I have this as a Word document so I can catch any typos that I might have. Your research essay is a completed essay on the topic that you proposed your ideas on last week. You're reporting unbiasedly on your topic. So what that means is this is not an argument paper. You're not trying to convince your audience. You're trying to inform your audience about your topic, just letting them know the different viewpoints out there. So it must examine at least 2 viewpoints to your topic, whatever viewpoints you want, whatever angles, opinions, point of views, whatever you want to call it. Just depends on your topic. But that way, since you have 2 viewpoints, you're not making it an argument that's one-sided. You're avoiding that one-sided argument. It should not be one-sided. So it must have the following. I recommend while you're watching this video that you turn to the Norton Field Guidebook, chapter 63. That's the one called Reports, and that you only look at that first sample called An Ancient Remedy Re-Examined. That starts on page 757 of chapter 63. Jason Hasler wrote a research report called An Ancient Remedy Re-Examined. You're following that exact same format for your paper, so it's really helpful. The only thing is he doesn't have a title page, so that's a little weird, but that's all right. We'll look past that. Page 1 of your report is a title page. It has to be an APA format, so make sure that you watch I have a video on how to format a title page in APA, so make sure you format an APA. That's an APA requirement. You need something called an abstract. An abstract is 1 paragraph or half the page at most. You're going to notice in the sample in the Norton Field Guide he has an abstract. An abstract is a summary of your paper. When you finish that paper, read it and picture yourself if we were in a face-to-face class and I had everybody stand up and just talk about what their paper was about. That's what an abstract does. It summarizes, so you don't need any sources in that little abstract. It's just a summary of what your paper's about. It's written last because you need to have the paper in order to summarize it, but it goes on page 2 of your report so that the audience reads that abstract and understands overall what your paper is going to be about. You don't have to be specific in the abstract, it's just a summary. I always tell students, if you struggle with the abstract, pretend if you watched a movie and somebody asked you, what was the movie about? You don't go into the details of every scene. You just tell them it's about this character that goes through this, and this is what happens at the end. It's a summary. So that's what you're doing with the abstract. That goes on page 2. Your paper needs section headings, kind of like what you did with that rhetorical analysis paper, where you had the paragraph marked ethos, the paragraph marked pathos, logos, audience, purpose. You're doing that same kind of format because this is a very formal report. It's not a 5-paragraph essay that you may or may not be used to. So if you look at this sample, you're going to notice that he uses different section headings in his report. That's what you're doing for this paper as well. So make sure you use section headings. The section headings should be an introduction section. You're going to have two separate viewpoints that you're writing about, so each viewpoint needs a section heading title, and the conclusion should also say and references. Conclusion and reference page must be bolded and centered. Okay, so let's move on to the rest of the paper. The introduction. Don't title this paragraph introduction. Whatever the title of your overall paper is, give that paragraph that same title, bolded and centered. Okay? The introduction, your actual paper starts on page 3, so be careful with that. Title page is page 1, abstract is page 2, so actual paper doesn't start till page 3. All right? For the introduction paragraph, all you're doing here is providing background information only. No, don't use any of your sources in the introduction. Your introduction shouldn't be too long because the whole point is the research part of your paper. So the introduction is just what you're already kind of used to. Contextualize your topic, which means provide background information about your topic. What's the history of it? What should the audience know about? What is it that you're writing about? And again, use that sample in the Norton Field Guide to kind of get an idea. Also include your thesis. Your thesis is the answer to your research question. This week I'm having you plan out a research question and also practicing a thesis. So once you really begin to write this paper, jump back into my feedback on this week's activities so you have your thesis ready to go. So no sources in the introduction. Now, once you're done with the introduction, you got to start using your sources that you found. So you need to title the section after your introduction something related to that first viewpoint about your topic. In the sample, he is writing about the use of maggots. So yeah, I have no knowledge in this topic, and I was a little weirded out, but that's okay. It's a good topic. It's interesting. It's very interesting, actually. But the first section title in his report after the introduction is called the maggots method. So he's just telling you about the method. All right. I'm calling it section because you're going to have more than one paragraph for these section headings because you're using sources in them. So whatever first viewpoint you want to call your paper, I'm going to use what I wrote about when I was a student in 1301. When I wrote a research paper, I wrote about standardized testing in public education. I'm personally against standardized tests, but I couldn't let my audience know that. So my first viewpoint section, I talked about the benefits that testing brings to schools. Okay, so I titled it something, benefits of the test, something like that, so that the audience knows that this section is only going to talk about for my topic, the benefits the standardized testing brings. I disagree to that, but I can't be unbiased. I have to respect the opposing side and write about that. So whatever first viewpoint your topic is about, give it a title. And you need to use at least 2 sources in this first viewpoint section. All right. You must use a writer's reference, this page range, this section if you have the ebook, to correctly format in-text citations. So be very, very careful with that and ask me for help on in-text citations. Once you're done synthesizing your 2 sources within your paragraphs for the first viewpoint, you're going to do the exact same thing for your second viewpoint. Give it a new title for this sample of the report in the Norton Field Guide. He titled it MDT versus conventional treatment. So he's looking at different angles there, which I really like. When I was a student, my second viewpoint section, the first one I talked about was the benefits of standardized testing. I can't stop there because that's one-sided. So my second viewpoint section was about the negative consequences of standardized testing. So I titled it something like that, the negative consequences of standardized testing. That way I'm balancing 2 different viewpoints about the test and public education. So whatever your section the second viewpoint you're examining, give it a title as well. Make sure it's bolded, centered like the sample in the Norton Field Guide. And you need two other sources in this section. So make sure those are synthesized and you use your APA in-text citations there as well. Can't stop the paper there. We got to have some kind of conclusion, all right? The sample has a third section. You're not required to do a third section. You're just focusing on two different viewpoints. Now, this sample does not have a labeled conclusion. Label your last paragraph a conclusion. You need that to close it off. Depends on your topic, but first offer your opinion on your topic, because the conclusion is where you're allowed to share your point of view. That's where you wait till the very, very end. The audience shouldn't know your opinion until they get to the conclusion. Make sure you're writing this paper in third person. You're using they, them, it, so don't use words like you, your, I, me, our, things like that. Use words like people, they, this paper will discuss, things like that. In the conclusion, you can write in first person if you want. You can break away and say, I think this, this, and this. That's where it's okay, is in the conclusion. It depends on your topic. If your topic is pro-con, kind of like the sample that I said with me, with standardized testing, good, bad, then maybe your conclusion you should probably discuss how these two very different viewpoints can come together to an agreement. Some topics aren't debatable. They're not pro-con. This topic in the book is kind of that way. He's talking about different methods to the science. So for that case, you can't really talk about how people come together in an agreement. So maybe discuss what you think that topic will be like in the future, and also just what your opinion of it is. That's a good way to close it out in that sense. Just depends on your topic. Don't stop there. The sample shows you need a reference page. The reference page is on its own page. So after the conclusion, bring your Word document to one more page, title it References, and all your 4 sources. You need at least 4 sources in this paper or more. All of your sources alphabetized in APA format. You must use a writer's reference, this page range, to correctly format those sources. Please ask me for help with the technicality of that. Okay, so that's the format of the paper. All right. The completed essay must be APA format, 12-point font, double-spaced, 1-inch margins, third-person point of view. So remember to review third person that we've been talking about. You need at least 4 secondary. You need secondary sources. Those are required, or more. You can have more than 4 sources if you'd like. Make sure there are at least 2 different variety, and what I mean by that is, maybe 2 academic articles and 2 magazine articles, or 2 newspaper articles and 2 magazine articles, or 1 newspaper article and 3 documentary. Mix and match it a little bit, at least 2 different. 4 sources total, though. All right, so make sure you review my lecture about sources and credibility with that. I don't recommend websites. I don't like websites, so try to avoid just websites as a source. For videos, it's YouTube. That's what I'm talking about. Again, just review my video to make sure you can distinguish that it's a credible YouTube video. No works of fiction, so don't do anything related to that, because that would invalidate anything related to your topic. If you'd like, you can conduct primary research. That's where you find information out there and create your own data, where you interview somebody related to your topic or survey a group of people to ask them questions about the topic. Primary research is not required, though, because that takes a lot of time. If you do decide to, if you do an interview, it counts as 1 source. If you do a survey, it counts as a separate source, but you still need 2 other ones, so you still need secondary sources regardless. But again, primary research is not required. If you decide to do primary research, attach your notes, survey results, interview questions, anything, because that's proof that you did primary research, so you need that proof. Failure to add that, put it somewhere at the end of the report. Failure to do this will cause you to lose source credit, because you need to prove that you did it. Okay? As always, 700 words or more total. If your paper lacks in-text citations, you will receive a failing grade. If it lacks a reference page, you will also receive a failing grade. This is a research report, so you have to use sources as part of the conventions of the genre. It's a research paper. So if you don't have any APA in-text citations in the first viewpoint, second viewpoint section, it will cause you to lose source credit. And I'm not doing that to scare you all, but it is a research report, so the conventions of that genre require sources, and it'd be kind of ironic if you talked about how to avoid plagiarism in this class in the past, and then you turn in a research paper without sources. Can't have that happen. Okay, so just be very careful. Always ask me for help with APA if you need it. And this research essay isn't due while you're watching this. This research essay is, the final draft is due Sunday, July 26th. Okay? Common concern when writing a research paper. A lot of students get kind of nervous, especially when I mention this, and they think they have to cite every sentence. You don't want to do that either. Am I relying too much on my sources? You don't want to do that. You want to synthesize where it's within the paragraph, a little bit of your observation, use a source to prove that, a little bit of your observation, use a source to prove that. Am I relying too little on my sources? And we don't want to have plagiarism. So am I plagiarizing? So first note that this is what should be cited. If you use an author's theory, for example, the discourse community essay, you're borrowing a theory, so you have to cite that author's theory because you didn't create the theory. So an author's theory has to be cited. Research, if you find an academic article that talks about something like a study of 150 college students where they were asked these questions, that you didn't create that research, and even if you did, you'd have to cite yourself. But research about whenever a source mentions a study, it's great information to use in your paper, so it must be cited. Again, any kind of research or studies, similar to research. If you use information from a source about a study that was done, it must be cited. Ideas the author of the source has, any kind of ideas that they're theorizing, you're taking that idea and using it in your paper. So make sure they're credible, of course, first. Who are they? Why do they have the credibility to share their opinion and for you to use in their paper? But it's their opinion, so you're using it for a reason. And information that you do. If you decide, remember it's not required, but if you decide to do primary research, you need to include your last name in the in-text citation and the year that you did the research, 2020. Or I would hope it would be this year that you would be doing the research, because you need to give credit to yourself if you took the time to interview or survey someone. What you don't need to cite. You don't need to cite common knowledge. I have an exaggerated number here, but if more than 10 sources, even more than 5 sources discuss it, you don't need to cite it. For example, the sky is blue. It's a fact. Broccoli is a vegetable. Thursday is before Friday. That's common knowledge, so you don't have to cite that. History. If something happened in the past that doesn't discuss data, what I mean by that is if you're not taking a population number, you need to cite population numbers because that's census data. Somebody did the research on that. But if it's a real event that doesn't discuss data, research, or theory, it doesn't need to be cited. For example, the year of something, the location of a place, when an event occurred, it's all history. It's facts, so you don't have to do that. When you should cite it is if you found a specific statistical, say that 10 times fast, specific statistical number with the information, because that means people conducted research to figure that number out. For example, census data or population should be cited. Your own observations, and what I mean by that, a lot of this paper is your own discussion about the 2 viewpoints. Not your opinions, but just what's going on, what is your topic about, why is this happening, what's occurring. Then you stop with the observation and find a source to prove that observation and validate it. If you're writing an unbiased research report, which you're doing right now, you write observations to then find sources to prove. To add basically this paper is you're adding your own discussion and research to the topic. You're adding knowledge to research papers are kind of phenomenal because you're adding your own input into a larger discussion about your topic. That's why there's certain topics that I don't really allow because they're so oversaturated that they've been written too much about, so it's really hard to find different angles to it. It's not a personal opinion, it's just what's out there. So with these papers, it's kind of neat because you're choosing this topic and adding your own observations and research that you found to add to the larger discussion of the topic. So it's pretty cool. These are important chapters that are going to help you with this paper. Using sources in order to correctly synthesize and give credit. These are the sections marked. APA in-text citation formatting, especially the writer's reference. The writer's reference does a really good job with that. So follow that for in-text citations. Follow the writer's reference also for that reference page format. It's really good with that. And then again, that sample APA research paper, the Norton Field Guide Chapter 63 that I was talking about earlier. Some of it isn't exactly what I want. That's the hard part about research papers. Instructors tweak them a little bit and they're not all exactly the same. But I want you to use this paper, this sample, just as a formatting guide, especially with the different viewpoints that he examines. That's mainly why I want you to look at that. And plus it's an APA format, so it's nice. He just doesn't have the title page and stuff like that, so just be careful with that. He also offers his opinion a little bit on some sections, so you don't want to do that either. Grading rubric's pretty straightforward. Is your introduction there? And did you provide that background information? It's up to 30 points. This is the most important part of the paper, did you find at least 4 sources, and are they synthesized well within the 2 separate viewpoint paragraphs? All right. Does your conclusion either offer your opinion on the topic and solutions to the issue, or do you talk about the future outlook? Again, that just depends on your topic. It's up to 20 points. This one's the most, so it's up to 100. Grammar mechanics, little to no grammatical errors. Are you writing in third person? Be careful with that. Your conclusion can be in first, but the bulk of the paper, even the conclusion if you want, should be in third person point of view. So review those. I'll add another worksheet this week about third person, just to clarify. And format, is it an APA format? Do you have the title page, abstract, required section headings, reference page, APA format? 30 points. This one's 20 points. So that'll total to 200. So it's a lengthy paper and you deserve more credit for it, so that's why it's more points. I'll have a more technical PowerPoint lecture on this for week 4 to kind of serve as a checklist for you. Make sure you have everything set. Right now, this week, you're getting your topic approved and you're just getting sources together to put it in, and you're starting to write it. If you're uneasy, you kind of want to get a head start on it. You don't want to wait till week 4 for that lecture. I mean, the lecture is just going to turn this into a PowerPoint, basically. But if you would like to, just send me an email and say, hey, can I get that lecture early? And I will gladly send it your way. I just don't want to overwhelm you with this paper works so much better when you just kind of take baby steps. And like I said somewhere in one of these lectures this week, that for week 4, part of your grade, one of the Blackboard module activities grade is to visit me during the week once, more than once if you want, but for credit at least once during office hours or during a scheduled appointment to discuss this paper. All right, so take your time with it, but start planning it out because this deadline can creep up on you. And it is a shortened paper. During a regular semester, I require more sources, more sections, things like that. So this is a more condensed paper. But if you have any questions, you all please. An email is harder to explain, in my opinion, the technicalities of this paper. So having a discussion during office hours, you don't need a webcam, you don't need a microphone for office hours. There's a chat box, and it just is a faster discussion than email. So, happy research and good luck with this paper.